Unit 10. Reuse components. Lesson. Working with function models. Lesson overview. In this lesson, you will learn how to create and use function models. As an example, you will call a function model for the encapsulation of a select in your program. Business example. In your program, you need a function that might already be available in the form of a function model, and you want to use this in your program if possible. Working with function models. A function model is a subroutine with a corresponding function that is centrally stored in the function library of the SAP system. Each function model has an interface for importing or exporting parameters. The main purpose of function models is their reusability, hence they belong to the so-called reuse components. Function group. Function models are organized into function groups. Each function group is a collection of function models that have similar functions and/or process the same data. A function group can contain the same components as an executable program. These include data objects, subroutines, and screens. The interface of a function model can contain the following elements. Import parameters. They can receive the values or variables of the calling program when the function model is called. Export parameters. The calling program accepts the output of the function model through the assignment of a receiving variable. Changing parameters. It is possible to pass the variables of the calling program that are changed by the function model to the changing parameters. And the exceptions. They can be triggered by the function model in certain error situations and provide information on a respective processing error in the function model. Example of a function model. So now we're going to create a function group for the ABAP course, and then we're going to modify the program cFlight screen to replace the select from spfly database table with a function model. So let's log on into the system and create a function model. So we're going to modify our program cFlight screen so that it uses function models. We have to create a function model for that. I'm going to show you how we are going to modify our program. So let's go into the object Navigator and into our ABAP course package, and let's take a look at our program. So I open cFlight screen. I'm going to make this full screen for a better view. So what we're going to replace here with a function model is this select and this select. As you can see, the select, both of them are from the same table, from the spfly table and the spfly table. So instead of using the select two times, we're going to create a function model that performs that select for us, and then we're going to call the corresponding function model at this point of the program and at this point of the program. The difference is, at this point of the program, the function model is going to export a table, and at this point it's going just to export a single record. So to create a function model and to create a function group, we navigate to transaction SE37. To create the function models, we do it via transaction SE37, the function builder, and the function group is created. Is created in transaction SE80, or the object Navigator. That is where we create the function group. First, we have to create the function group so we can store our function models inside of it. So I go back, and inside our package ABAP course, I'm going to right click, create function group. This is going to create a function group in my package ABAP course. So the function group is going to be called C function group CFG. I like to use that prefix to call the function groups ABAP course, and the short text is going to be function group for the ABAP course. I save, I select a package, a request, and now I have my function group created. So there you go. I have in my ABAP course package, I have two function groups. The function group for the table passenger, that was a maintenance table generator, and a function group for our ABAP course. So now we have two ways of creating a function model. We can right click on the function group and select create function model, and then we specify the name of the function model, the function group, and a short text. I'm going to cancel because I want to show you the transaction SE37 used to create functions, and it is the function builder. So I go back and I type transaction SE37, and that takes me to the function builder. So I'm going to create a function model for selecting my data. So I'm going to call this function model C function model, and then I always like using my application component to specify that this function model is, for example, for the application component of the SD model, or for the sales model, or for example the HR model or application component. So I specify SZFM-HR, that is the human resources application component. Since we are not working in a specific application component, in this case I'm not gonna specify an application component, but it is a good programming practice to always specify your application component. So I'm just going to leave it like this, and then underscore, and I'm going to name this function model get flight data, and create. The function group is my recently created C function group ABAP course, and the short text is select data from the SPC table, and then I save my function model. So now I'm inside my function builder. In the function builder I have all these tabs. Let me explain you what each tab means. So first we have attributes for a function model, where we can specify the short text or change the description of our function. We can specify a processing type if it is a normal function model, a remote enable function model, and we can see some general data: who created the function model, who changed it, in what package, and so on. Then we can also look at the function group that this function model belongs to. Then we have the import tab, where we specify import parameters for our function model. We specify a name, a type, if it is type or like, and then we specify an associated type, that this could be a data element, it could also be a structure, and it could also be a table type. So you can have import parameters that are just a variable, there are structures, or that are tables. You can specify if they're optional parameters or if they are obligatory or required. So if you specify them that they are required, you must always send that parameter into this function whenever you use it or call it in a program. If not, it can produce an error or a short dump in your program. And then you specify a short text or a description for your parameter. Then we have the export parameters. You can always add and delete parameters using the corresponding buttons, the insert row or the delete row. The export parameters is the same meaning, the same example. For example, in the export parameters, you define a parameter name, the type, it could be type or type ref2 if it is just a reference. This could be useful if you are specifying classes as parameters, for example, and a type that could be a single type, a data element, a structure, or a table type. We have the changing parameters. The import parameters, you send information to the function model. In the export parameters, you return data in your export parameters to your program by specifying here. In the changing, this means that the parameter is going to be changed, is going to be sent into the function model, then it's going to be processed inside the function model, it's going to be changed, and then it's going to be returned in the same name for the parameter. So you can specify the name, a type, and it could be also a data element, a structure, or a table type. You can specify a default value, and also if it's going to be optional or not. The export parameters, as you can see, are always obligatory or required. Changing and import can be optional. The tables parameters, you can send tables, internal tables, into the functions and then process the information. And you can specify a type. It could be also a reference to a class. And you can specify a type for this table. In this type, you can specify a structure. And then you specify the structure of your internal table, Or you can also specify a table type. So this is going to be a table made of tables. So each column is going to be a table with more columns. It could be optional also or not. And you specify a description for your table. In the exceptions, you specify the exceptions for your function model. And in the source code, you can program and write the code that you need for your function model. So let's start coding a function model to replace the select statement in our program. So let's start by defining the parameters that we're going to need for a function model. So if you remember, we had the select statement. So let's just write the select statement so you can recall what we need. So we're going to select everything from the SPC table into corresponding fields of table T SP flee, where the car ID equals the car ID that we have in the screen, remember? So that can be an import parameter. So I'm gonna declare that import parameter with the prefix I underscore caret ID, and we also need the flight or the con ID. Oops, I'm sorry. I'm going to close this. Well, I'm going to carry on. So there you go. So I'm going to have two import parameters, the car ID and the con ID. Let me close this. There you go. So now I need to define these two import parameters. So I go to the import tab and write e car ID. I select type, and now the type. Remember, the type or the data element was S car ID, and this is the airline code. We're going to leave this parameter as optional, because if the user doesn't specify a car ID, then it means that he wants to take a look at all of the airlines, not just one. So we're just going to leave it optional. And the same goes for the other parameter, the con ID. It's going to be optional, and the data type is going to be sConID, the flight connection number. Now, for the export, we need to return a single record from the database table. If the user specifies the car ID and the con ID, we need to return a structure. So this is going to be the structure type SPFleet database table. So we're going to name this structure SPFleet data. We're going to name it with the prefix S for structure SPFleet data. The type is going to be the type of the flight schedule database table. So if the user specifies a car ID and a con ID, then we're going to return the data associated to the SPFleet table. The changing parameters, we're not going to use changing parameters in our function model, so we leave that blank. And the tables, we need a table called T for table, the prefix table, SPFleet data. The typing is going to be type the same table. Then the system tells me that flat types may only be referenced using the like. So we change this to like, and there you go. And this is going to be optional also, because it is not all the time that we're going to return a table. So now we have the return parameter as a table, the export as a structure, and the import parameters. We also are going to specify an exception. This exception is going to be if the user inputs an invalid caret ID. So the exception is going to be called invalid underscore car ID or invalid airline, and the short text is going to be invalid airline code. We press enter, and now we go to our source code, and now we can see that the system just added us some comments. So in the comment section we have the import, the two parameters we just declared, and the type for our reference, the exporting parameters that we have and the type, the tables and the exceptions. So we can use this as a reference. So now we start coding. So first we need to know if the import parameters were specified or not. So we write an if car ID and con ID. We're going to use the OR. If any of those were specified, then no, I'm sorry, we're going to use the AND, because in order to form the key for the table SPFLI, we need both. So if both are specified, then we're going to select everything from the SPFLI table into corresponding fields of our structure SPFLI data that we define in our export parameters. So we're going to select that into our export parameter, where car ID equals the import parameter and the con ID equals the other input parameter. Now, else I'm going to erase this. If we don't specify those parameters, that means that we want all the data from the table, not a specific record. So we're going to select everything from the same table into corresponding fields of table, and we select our table declared in our tables parameter. Go ahead and click the pretty printer. We check the syntax. I'm sorry, I forgot to write here. I'm sorry. If car ID is not initial and if con ID is not initial, so we're having this error right now. This is a very common mistake. So as you can see, it's telling us that there is no open if statement, and we're looking at our if statement and everything looks okay. This problem is because we forgot the single in this statement, because remember, we're selecting just a single record. So because we didn't specify a single, the system is expecting an end select. So if we place the end select, everything is okay. But in this case, we don't want to do a loop, we just want a single record. So we place the single also, and then everything is okay. So now I can check my syntax and activate. Remember always to use the single ABAP statement when you want to refer to just one record. So now we are receiving two parameters, and if they are not initial, we perform the select like this, and if not, we perform the select like this. So what about the exception? So let's write and use our exception. So if our car ID is not initial, we're going to select count from where equals our parameter. What does this mean? That I just want a count from the table spfly for all the car IDs that are specified in the parameter, and because car ID is a unique key value, it should return 1 here, or if not, if it doesn't return anything, so if the psi sub c not equals 0, this means this select was not successful because it couldn't find the car ID parameter in the table. Then we're going to raise our exception. So we're going to raise the invalid car ID exception. I select pretty printer and the syntax, and everything is okay. So if I don't find the car ID that the value that the user specifies in the input screen, so if I don't find it, I'm going to raise the exception. So now let's check the syntax. And now we can activate our function model. Now our function model, it is active. So now we can go ahead and use our function model in our program. So how do we do that? Let's go back to the program. Let's click on back, exit, and we go to the object navigator. We navigate to our program, flight screen program. We click on change, and now we're going to replace this with the corresponding function models. So at the start of selection, I'm going to place my cursor here. I'm going to use the pattern button, and I'm going to use call function. So I write my function, C function model, get data, and I don't remember my name exactly, so I place an asterisk, and I go ahead and click the search button. So I get that no search, no criteria was found, so I think it was just get. There you go, it was get flight data, and I called that function model. I click OK, and now the ABAP editor fills out the corresponding code for me, so I don't have to worry about the code. And as you can see, all the optional parameters are placed in comments because these are optional, so you don't need. In case one of these parameters was obligatory, then this will be displayed like this. So for our first use, so how do we use our function model? So in this case, as you can see, we're going to replace tselect. Tselect doesn't use the car ID and the con ID parameters, so we can go ahead and leave this comment in the comment section. We're just going to uncomment the tables parameter and the exceptions. So we need to declare an internal table. So it's going to be LT for local table underscore SP fly data. And I need to declare this on my program. Type table of, remember the type, it was spfly. And this doesn't receive any parameters, so this is going to return all the data that is stored in the spfly table. So if the size sub RC equals 0, so everything goes okay, there are no exceptions raised, then I'm going to erase here, and I am going to write to the screen this, remember? But to write that, I have to loop at the table. So I'm going to loop at my table into a working area called the same that I need to declare. I'm sorry, I already have the working area. I can use the same working area. So I loop into that, and then I can write that to the screen. And for each loop, remember to use the hide condition. So now I can go ahead and comment this, just to show you that it has the same effect as the function model. So now I replace my select. I can go ahead also and erase this because I'm not going to use it in my function model. Go ahead and save. So now my start selection, I called my function get flight data. I get my data into my internal table, and then if everything goes okay, I loop and I write it to the screen. The same functionality I had before. Now, what happens at line selection? I'm also going to replace this. So I can reuse my function model the same way, the pattern and the call function. So as you can see, I'm reusing components. But this time, I need a car ID and a con ID. So I change my code and this time I'm going to import my structure only. So I import and I use the same working area that it serves as a structure for the import parameter. I erase the tables, I don't need the tables, and the exceptions, I always need them. So if everything goes okay, then if everything goes okay, then I'm going to move my corresponding return structure into my structure of the screen. Remember, we already have this before, and then I'm going to call my screen. If not, if the exception was raised with the invalid car ID, that means this size sub RC is going to be carrying the 1. So I can write a case size sub RC for my different exceptions. So when I raise the first one, or number 1, I'm just going to show a message to the screen: invalid airline, type E, but display like S. There you go. So now I replaced also, let's erase these selects because we're replacing them. The same goes for this one. So now let's take a look at our program one more time, at the complete code before testing the program. So we have the start of selection, and then we call the function model we created. It returns a table that we loop through and we hide the key values. And then at the line selection, we call one more time the function model with the hidden or the buffered key values, and then it returns a structure, a working area that we move to the screen, and then we present the screen. But if there was an error, then we're going to message. I'm going to message also other error in case we have other mistakes. And then we have the end if. So let's check the syntax. Everything is okay. So now we can activate our program. Once we activate our program and it is active, let's run it to test if everything is working just like it was working before. So we run and let's select this one, the Singapore to Frankfurt airline. So the QF, we double click and we see the information displayed correctly, QF Singapore to France destination, and we can go back and we can test our program and we can see that everything is working just like it was working before. Everything is okay. But now we implemented the function models in the corresponding function groups. So we can reuse these function models in other programs and inside other function models.